Welcome to the Pennsylvania PIMS Course Submission and PVAAS webinar. In this webinar, we're going to discuss the data items needed for the course submissions and PVAAS. We're going to walk through the steps of implementing the PVAAS submission. So for this webinar today, I am actually using as my main references 4 knowledge base articles that we have on the PVAAS submission, and I will show you where you can access those at the end of the webinar. So everything that needs to be done as is done in MMS Generations. So I'm going to log into Generations. There we go, little false start. I think this week or last week we had an update to the Pennsylvania EDR, so I am running the latest and greatest, and that is 10.22. If you're not sure which version you're running, if you're an MMS online client, we do the update for you, and I am not sure. I think Chris is still rolling out the latest release, but if you're not sure which version you're running, if you click on the Pennsylvania EDR operations, go to exports, you can see right here it has the version number right there. So that's PIMS 10.22. All right, so the first place we're going to go to is the course catalog editor. And that is available through the Pennsylvania EDR operations menu. There we go. I want to address the fields that are needed for PVAAS, and then we are going to go back and we are going to review the fields that are needed for the course submission. Now this is your course catalog. These are all the fields related to the catalog for GPA calculations and honor roll and so forth. And we're going to skip over the state course code just for a second, but the Pennsylvania subtest identifier is the first field, and for the most part the only field that we look at when we are doing our PVAAS submission. The tests are all preloaded, or all mine were preloaded, but if I click down on here, I have the option of selecting this to leave it blank, or if I have a test that isn't on my list, I can edit the list of values and add a new test to it. So it is quite the list that I have here so far, and well, probably not nearly everything. This is my sample demo database, so I only have a few of the tests here. But you do have the ability to add to that list. So the rest of the Pennsylvania fields that we're looking at, the state course code, which is right here. So you will want to enter in the Pennsylvania standardized course code that corresponds to the selected course. For the dual enrollment courses, use the course code that best describes the content of the post-secondary course. The next Pennsylvania field that we're going to be looking at is the PA course differentiator. And what that does is it indicates when the course is offered. So you can see here the 3 that I have listed so far are full year courses. Let's scroll over a little bit more. So what I have here are some valid values for Pennsylvania. So I have, a differentiator B, which indicates that the course is offered during semester 1 and semester 2, and, marking period 1 through 4. So we have F1, F2. So this field is required for the course submission. PA honors, you will check that box if this course is considered an advanced academic course. The PA requirement that will be checked if this course is required for a high school diploma. The PA dual credit, that box will be checked If this item is an alternate course code, a state course code is one of 6 general dual enrollment course codes. Let's scroll a little bit further along. So we have the PA Advanced Placement. That box will be checked if this course can make a student eligible for an advanced placement credits for a post-secondary institution. We have the PA Career and Tech. That will be checked if this is a career and technology course. PA Gifted indicates if this course is intended for gifted students. And the PA Baccalaureate should be checked if this course is part of an international baccalaureate program. Next, we have the PA Delivery Model, and you will select the code that signifies the method used to deliver instruction to the students in this course. If no value is selected here, the default of 0340 will be loaded, and that signifies in school. So if you do click on that, we have the different delivery models. If you do not select anything, then this 0340 in school is what will be loaded. So that's nice. So we have the next box, checkbox is exclude from PIMS. So I know of a lot of schools who have an advisory, or they have their lunch, and their lunch is a course. Clearly those would not be courses that you would want to upload to the state of Pennsylvania. I'm sure they are concerned whether your students have lunch, and then the PA school code. That field is designated to help out schools who, against our guidelines, store more than one physical school in a single school code. For example, if you look at my database up here, this is I'm running my district database, and then within that database I have several schools. I have my high school, my middle school, and 3 elementaries. And you can see here that each school has a different school code. My high school is 910. Some schools will have, there'll be like a 6 through 12 school. And you see this a lot with smaller charter schools where they'll have, K through 12, but they'll all be in one school code here. Rather than having multiple codes, they'll just have my charter school. And when reporting on through Pennsylvania, we need to separate the different schools. So if you are that school that combines, this PA school code will help you differentiate your middle school courses from your high school courses. But what I just stated, that scenario, is not how we recommend that you build your database. And then there is one other Pennsylvania field, and that is exclude from EWS. We really won't be addressing EWS in this webinar. I think with the course submission and PVAAS, our time will be well spent there. But I did want to mention that there is one other field. If you made any changes, you're going to want to click on the red diskette, and that will exit you out of the course catalog and save your changes. The next place we're going to go to is the Student Schedule Editor. Now I can access that through the Scheduling Jobs menu, or I can click on the SCH, Student Schedule Editor, shortcut here. If you are not licensed for scheduling, you can access the students' schedules through the grade editor. I'm just going to use my shortcut and click on the Student Schedule Editor there. Now what we want to check here, this is not a very good student with a good schedule. There's a much better schedule. What we want to verify here is our view, edit, section, entry, exit dates. So this is important that this be accurate for your students when doing the PVAAS, and we need to make sure that these dates are entered in appropriately. So when you do withdraw a student from a class, the date is captured. If there is no entry date entered here, MMS will insert the first day in your school calendar. So for me, in my school calendar, August 4th is my first day of school. That will be the date that MMS will use for calculating that student-teacher ratio. The next area that we need to address is our edit scheduling term definitions. And that is found in the school management jobs. And it's right here on that main menu, edit scheduling term definitions. I have a very simple terms set up. I have my full year courses, I have 2 semesters, and I have 4 quarters. Those are the only terms that I am using within my database. I did have several others that I was not using, and it caused problems with the export. And just to simulate that error when we get there, I am going to delete my dates here. Having dates for all of your terms, even the ones that you don't use, is important. MMS is going to come to this list when doing your PVAAS export, and if there are any terms here that do not have a start date and an end date, it will not calculate. It will pop up the message saying that there's a problem with this, your scheduling term definitions, and it won't continue. So I did have some rotation courses defined here, but I wasn't using them, so I deleted them. And then things worked fine. So I'm going to save and exit. The next thing we're going to go to is our edit staff information. Now for the PVAAS data that you need to enter, you would only need to have access to the edit staff basic, but for the course submission, you would need to access the staff expanded. So I'm just going to go to my staff expanded. That way I can address both the course submission and the PVAAS fields that are required. Ignore the SIF message, that is for Massachusetts. So here for PVAAS, we need to go to our PIMS tab, and we are going to go to our General Information 2, and what we are looking for is if there is an exit date entered for the teacher, then we need to have a termination code. So if you have a teacher that started the school year with you and then left, this information needs to be entered and it needs to be accurate. So here are some of the termination codes. I'm not sure if my list is complete, and then we would need an exit date. Now for the course submission, I mean, obviously there's a lot of information here for Pennsylvania, and generally all of the fields that you see that are listed in black are required fields. But focusing just on the course submission and PVAAS, we're going to skip over all of those other fields. The other field that we want to address is actually on the Staff Info 1 tab, and that is the long teacher ID. In this field, you should have the state assigned ID number for the teacher, which I don't. The next area we're going to go to is so we're going to save and exit out of here. And one thing I didn't address that when we were looking at the course catalog, let me pull that up again. In the course catalog, Oh, I was going the wrong way. Wrong course catalog. And we want this one. We have the Pennsylvania subtest identifier. There are instances when the different sections of a course will teach to a different test. Or there may be a situation where a single section of a course will address two different subtests. So we will address those concerns in the webinar. So let me go back to my section editor, and this time we are going to go to the section editor through the usual MMS path. So I'm going to click on my school management jobs, and I'm going to go to edit course sections. So if I scroll over, and I'm looking at my English 9+, that was one of the, excuse me, that was one of the few courses that I actually had a subtest for in my course catalog. If, for example, I need to scroll over just a little bit more. There we go. If Section 2 of English 9+ is actually addressing a different subtest, we can select that here. There are additional fields that we want to address, and first we want to talk about responsibility. Now we have 10 different responsibility codes. We have the first one right there, then we have responsibility 2, 3, 4, all the way down to responsibility 10. Let's go back to the beginning here. There we go. So there's a lot going on with this responsibility field. If only one teacher is responsible for a section, leave it as 0. Then when the PVAAS information is being pulled, MMS will see that 0 and it will know that 100% of the responsibility goes to that one teacher. If more than one teacher is involved in teaching the section, leaving both or up to 10 teachers with the responsibility of 0, MMS will equally divide the responsibility among the teachers selected there. So you don't need to figure out what the percentage is. MMS will do that for you. If you insert a value of 999 for any teacher that works with only a few students in the section, then enter 100 for the primary teacher. So here we have the primary teacher is the teacher that we have selected here with the teacher name and teacher code. So for Ingle is the primary teacher, and I have her down as a responsibility of 100. For my second teacher, Bodner, I would put 100 is not correct. I would put 999 for so that we know that she's only in there for a few students. And I do have a third teacher here, and that should not have a responsibility of 100. So here I should either not have a teacher, or how many teachers do I have here? So if with 2 teachers I could put, 50% for my third teacher and then change this one to 50%, or whichever breakdown of the percentage of time is appropriate. That 999 value will allow the value to be edited later for individual students. Any value left at 999 by the time the PVAAS export will be omitted. So that indicates students with 999 on the export was not being taught by that teacher. The final percentages will be edited later. Now, way down at the end here, we have another field called the PA Teacher of Record. This is an optional field. This field is generally necessary if Teacher 1 is a long-term substitute replacing the Teacher of Record. So if Mrs. McKnight was the Teacher of Record, they're the staff person who's hired, but she was out on maternity leave or medical leave for an excessive amount of time, and she is still the teacher of record, but they hired a long-term substitute, and that substitute teacher name was put as, Teacher 1. All right. So I do want to address the other fields here because they are needed for the course submission. So let's go back to the beginning. We've already talked about the subtest identifier, if it's different than what's on the course catalog. We've talked about responsibility. PA language. Well, you need to select the code for the primary language in which the course is taught. If no language code is selected, then the export will insert the value of 1290, which is English. There we go. Barbados. That's interesting. So if it is English, you do not need to put any value in there. The PA delivery. Select the code that signifies the method used to deliver the instruction to the students in this course. Again, if no code is selected, then the export will fill in 0340 for in school. We've already talked about the Pennsylvania Teacher of Record, and then we've already addressed the second, third, fourth, up to the 10th teacher, and responsibility. So that should take care of that. And okay, moving on to my next packet of information. So at this point, we have all of the fields needed to generate the course export option. So I'm going to save my changes here. Yes. And to do the course export, we're going to go to our Pennsylvania EDR menu. We're going to click on the Exports menu, and we are going to go to the PIMS Course Export option. And here we have several different files that we can generate. And before you come to this and start producing your files, just something to think about. If you are doing the course export, some things to a checklist per se is to make sure that your PIMS preferences must be completed. And let's jump to that. I know mine aren't, but just to show you where that happens. We have the Pennsylvania PIMS preferences, And here you can enter in the school code, your district code, your resident district code, the location code of residence, funding district, and so forth. You can store those defaults, and then you can update the teacher assignments table within the section table changes, whether you're school-wide Title I or whether you want to display the manual EWS exports, which, as I said, we're not going to get into the EWS. So you need to make sure that these are updated. You need to make sure that the PIMS related fields in the course catalog editor are complete. We've already reviewed that. The state course code field in the PIMS course catalog editor must be complete. The course must meet on the selected day. Let's go back to my export here. So there is our date that we're looking at. And the dates must be entered in the term definition editor, which we have a problem with that, remember? Okay, so at this point, enter my district code. You can see I have the word district in here. As soon as I enter in my 9-digit code, very top secret information, click out of it, that code is now entered in. Looking at the address here of where my file is going to be built, right now it's going to be built right on the server. If you don't have access to the server, if you're an MMS online client, you do not have access to the server. If you are self-hosted, you may have access to the server. Get your IT person to copy the file over to you. Make sure that where you save it is where you can get access to that. And clicking on the ellipsis will allow you to browse to a location where you can access that file and then upload it to the state. In my little world, I have access to my server, so I'm not going to change that. So we are going to click on process. If you do want to save your settings, we do have the save setting and recall settings available to you. So I'm going to click on process, and because I wasn't in school at that point. We're going to select all courses for the current year. This is the option that we want to use. The as of date is an option to provide a snapshot of your courses for the date selected, but for submitting for the state, you will want to do all courses for the current year. And let's process that again. And then we also have an option here to export only courses or sections with students enrolled. So if you do have courses in your course catalog that currently no offerings are available for that year, either due to students not wanting them or teacher inavailability, but you don't want to delete them from your catalog, this option will only export those that have students enrolled. So not surprising here, I have some errors, and we give you the ability to view and print that report. Let's see, I have some a lot of problems with my codes. Yep, so I didn't have that PA semester filled in. If something went through, I would have been very surprised. Click OK. So if we do the course instructor, so we have the primary instructor ID may not be empty. Hopefully your data is not as holy as mine, as in lots of holes in the data. Great, I think I've gone beyond what I needed to. So for the checklist for the course instructor export, which I've already done, you want to make sure that the PIMS related fields in the PIMS course catalog editor are complete, that the PA language field in the course section editor is entered, that the long teacher ID number, the PPID, is entered in, and that is entered through the Edit Staff Expanded, and that dates must be entered into the term definition editor. The last checklist to go through is the student course enrollment, and the state course code must be entered into the course catalog, and then choose all courses for the current year. The export data as of this date is optional and is included for future considerations. All right, so now we're going to forge ahead with the next area of the PVAAS that needs to be addressed. So we're going to exit out of here, and we are going to, this is a change for this year. So where you created the different elements that built into creating your PVAAS export, we've put them in a very nice logical window now. So if you go to the Pennsylvania EDR operations, click on PVAAS and go to Manage PVAAS Data, all of the operations that you need to run, plus a few extras, have been added to this. So this is your one-stop shopping for creating your PVAAS export. You want to start, and it says right here in this yellow note field, you want to start with your teacher assignments and work your way down the list. Once everything is correct here, then you will go to the teacher student responsibility, create that report, validate, and then finally go to the staff student subtest, go to the create, update, validate, and edit. So we are going to start with the create update report. And let's talk about some of the options here. So the create update assignments, the one that it defaults to, that will add new records for all of the teachers assigned to any course or section. Edit and entry information is calculated based on the scheduling term date definitions. This operation does not change a field that already contains data. You do not want to run this operation until your courses and sections are finalized. So if teachers or courses are still in flux and you haven't settled on which teachers are actually going to be doing a specific course, you want to wait until that happens. Let me see here. Override. I don't think you really need to do that one, and you don't really need to do those two options on your first one. We want to run this for all classes, and the date that you're going to use in determining if a course has ended, that's going to be your last day of school. My calendar goes to the end of July, but we'll pick June 16th. We do have a teacher range available, but we're going to click on process, and there's that problem. So even though I modified my quarter 4, and I'm relatively certain that I don't have any students that have a quarter 4 class, it's still going to generate this error message. So nothing has happened, and the process has been canceled. So I need to leave here and go back to my term definitions and now enter in. When entering in the term definitions, it's really tricky to try to click in that very first field. I happen to manage that one. So what I like to do is tab into it and then I can enter in the code. So we're going to do 03/14/2016 and then tab, and that is going to be 07/29/2016. And we are going to save and exit. Now if I go back and do my PVAAS manage data and create an update, and process. So we have a report that has been generated of the teacher assignments. We have the option of viewing and printing that information right now. And mine is not very long because I don't have very many, a lot of information in regards to Pennsylvania data. So you can print it from here, export. We do have an assignment report that can be generated at any time. So before you saw the report, once you created it and you didn't have the ability to, if you didn't save it then, you didn't have a way of getting that report again. So here we do have the assignments report. We have the teacher range available to you, so if you only want to look at or report on one teacher, you can do that, and then hit process and you have that report. We have some other options that are available to you here, and let me find my notes on those. We have the update exit dates, which is something that is new. So previously when you selected to update dates, the date to be updated would be set to the first day of the year and the new date would be the end of the year. Now instead of that, both this process and the teacher-student responsibility process will set the dates based on the option that is selected. So both dates will be the end of the year for exit dates and the first day of the year for starting dates. So this should help alleviate some of the accidental replacements that occurred last year. So we have the update exit date option, we have update the starting date option, and we also have the ability to delete the assignments. So if you need to back out of this, we give you an easy way of deleting those tables. All right, so let's go back here. I thought I had some notes on override state course codes with codes from the course catalog. So generally this option is unchecked, although it did default to having that checked when I entered in to this operation. This option will override state course codes present in the teacher assignments with the value found in the course catalog. Uncheck this option if changes have been made to the individual sections. The other option here, override responsibility percentages with values from the section table. By default, it is not selected. When this option is selected, all values in the teacher assignment table are updated with the responsibility values found in the section table under the teacher responsibility. Any non-zero responsibility values would not be updated unless this option is checked. So the select which classes to be used for the assignments. By default, you want to run this for all classes. And then this is the date that you will use in determining if a course has ended. And generally that is the last day of school. New for this release is validate data. And so the validate data buttons, you can see we have 3 of them that have been added here. This will run a process to locate records that might cause a problem. For the teacher assignments, it only looks out for the order dates. Hopefully that will no longer happen with the process that we have in place, but if it does or exists from a prior version, this validate data will catch that error. And while we're talking about that, for the teacher student responsibility, the validate will check for out of order dates, records that have a subtest code assigned but zero responsibility, and records where a single course section teacher student have multiple records with dates that overlap. For the last validate data, it will choose to look for students whose total responsibility for a subtest is over 100%. The process will always look out for out of order or overlapping dates. So once you create your table, you do have the ability to go in and edit that. And so here, this is a teacher editor, and we can order the teachers by last name or by ID. And for each teacher, you can see the list of courses and their responsibility. And this is a full editor. You can't add records, but you can change the information that's in here. For example, I have some classes that should have been selected as not to export to PIMS, so I can delete those records. So I have my advisory here, so I'm going to click on the red X up here, and that's going to delete them. And then by using the select the next record, or I can click on find a record and go right to a specific teacher. So once you make these changes and do your edits, if you go back through and create update report, you want to make sure that you don't undo the edits that you've done. The next area is the create update report. Before we get to this, there is something that you can do that will help alleviate a common problem that happened last year with the PVAAS submission. So I'm going to exit out of here. And first what I want to do, and I should have been doing this, had this filter set before, is for the PVAAS we need to submit for all students, whether they're active or inactive. So you need to change the filter to all students. I went by it, sorted by name, and that filter will be there. That is one of the default filters that MMS ships with, and you can't edit, delete, mutilate that filter. So that filter will always be there for you. The next thing you want to do is you want to go to biographical jobs, and under operations you're going to go to mass edit biographical information. And here you want to look for the scheduling flag. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with the EMF flag, and that is the flag for biographical. So if a student is inactive in biographical, for the most part, unless you have your filter set to all students, generally we filter on only active students. So we want to look for the scheduling flag. So that is SC, I can't type real fast, so I can get the first two letters in. And here's our scheduling flag. So that's going to indicate whether a student is active or inactive for scheduling. Even if the student is inactive, we need to report on them. If they even served, attended our school for one day, we need to report on them. So they need to be active for scheduling. So I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to put the new value in of A, which means active. I would be inactive. Click OK, and now here we see down here that we're going to set the field scheduling flag to A, active. There's no need to set a condition or a student range, we want to set all of our students active for scheduling. And what happens a lot of times, and I know it's sometimes we get a little click happy, is that when a student leaves us, rather than just setting them inactive for biographical, there has to be, at least 10 or 12 different areas where you can set them inactive. And a lot of times people who are unsure, they will select all of the inactive flags for that student. And there really is no need for that. If you have a situation where the student was given a schedule but they never was part of that school year, they got rolled over or they exited during the summer, and the best thing to do for those students is to withdraw them from all their classes. You could remove them from that school year. If you delete the student from just that school year, it doesn't affect their transcripts from prior school years, but just removing them from their classes would be enough to not have them show up in in anything that they shouldn't. But setting them inactive for scheduling is something that you don't want to do. So we are going to click on process, and this is just a warning message. Please read them. So you are about to apply the following change to the database. Set the scheduling flag to active for all selected students. Are you sure you wish to proceed? Yes. And I ran this last night, and I have 506 students in my database, my high school database, and that a total of 0 values were changed. So all of my students were active for scheduling. Click OK, and now we're going to exit. Now we're going to go back to our PVAAS, managing data, and we're going to click on the Create Update Report. So here is a, oh my goodness, I'm eating my words here. We're going to exit out of here. Now I did talk about another situation where a student is taking a section of a class, and that section, that particular section, happens to teach to 2 different subtests. And we do know that this happened last year. Now the way to get around that, and let me pull up my section editor here, and I'm going to pick on my English class that I have going here. There, we're all loaded. So I'm going to be working with my English 9+. I'm going to add a new section. And for this section, I am not going to, well, I have to give it a semester. So I'll give it a full year class. I have to give it a starting and ending period, but that really doesn't matter. Enrollment will get fixed. We don't need to give it a room or a teacher code because we really don't want this to show up on a teacher's gradebook. It's not going to be linked. Priority doesn't matter. What we want to make sure is that we don't give it a grade plan. And so for my section 2 of English 9+, we have this subtest that it is associated with, and we're just going to give it, that would not be the appropriate subtest, but you understand what I'm doing here. So I'm going to give that a Oh, I do need to fill in the teacher. Sorry about that. So for English, that's Hobble. So we're going to give the same teacher. Room doesn't really matter. Grade plan, and we're going to leave it set as 0 for responsibility. And what we're going to do, so we need the students who are in Section 2 of English 9 Plus to also have Section 5 of English 9 Plus. And that way they will be associated with that one course with the 2 different subtests. Now the best way to add this additional section to those students that have this section is to do a conditional add. Yes, we are going to save our changes. No. So we are going to go to the student schedule editor. We'll schedule editing jobs, and we're going to go to operations, and we are going to do, so we're going to do a conditional add. We can set a student range if we want, but we are going to, for all students who have English 9 Plus, which is 101 Section 2, we are going to give them 101 Section 5, which has that alternate subtest associated with it. So I could set my student range if I wanted to, but only those students that have Section Course 101 Section 2 are going to be given Course 101 Section 5. And we're going to process our edits. So the 13 students that had that Section 2 are now going to have Section 5. So that is how you would handle that situation where a student, a course has teaches to more than just one subtest. Now we're going to go back to the PVAAS, manage data, and go to the create update report. I'm getting ahead of myself. Create update, the student, teacher-student responsibility. Thank you. So we have some options here for you. We have the option to create the records, so that would be your initial creation, and that's what you're going to do the first time you go through here. We give you the option to delete records, so if you make a mistake, we can delete the records. As in the first operation, we give you the ability to update the starting dates, to update the ending dates if a mistake was made with the ending dates. And then here we also give you the teacher-student responsibility listing. I think it's really important to, oh, we've had some questions here. Let me finish this operation and I'll go back and talk through some of the questions here. As I was saying about the teacher-student responsibility listing, that's really important to, once you think you have the file the way you want it, to produce the report, look at the data, make sure that there are no errors. Here you can share the data with people who are familiar with the data and know and would be able to catch some errors. But being able to look at it in another form is, I think, really important. And you can output it as a PDF document rather than printing off page after page of paper. So if we go back to our create records, we have some options over here. We have the overwrite subtest codes. This is checked by default and can be left checked. When this table is created, there are no existing codes to be overwritten, so that won't harm that. However, if you realize after creating the table that the incorrect subtest was assigned to a course or section, if you run this again and override the subtest codes, they'll be updated to the correct values that you just made. The date of the PSA or Keystone exam, this is the date of the exam, is given to the students. So obviously, when you are running this, you are going to run this for the dates where all of the subtests were given. When you do set your date, so let me, oh, it's 8:16. It threw me off here. And I went back too far. Say, oh, I don't know. Pick a date, Elaine. Here we go. So September 28th, say you had a test that was given on that date. For this date, you are going to want to, we're going to consider all classes. So we're going to build our list. And we could simplify that by, selecting the meeting period. So if we know the test was given during quarter one, we can limit our view of our courses by only those courses that would have met during the month of September and build our list there. We can order the list by course and section or by teacher number, teacher name, or by room. By default, it's by course and section. And here for the particular test that we want to run this for, we need to select just those sections that are associated with that test. So that's where printing off those previous reports are a good thing. We also have the course catalog section listing, the catalog listing and the section listing, two different listings there that you can print off. So you would select the courses that you want. Let's see, I'll do just my English 9 here. And then you can process, but let's talk about the other options here before we do that. Include students not entered into attendance. If you have students that are not physically in your building, but you need to report out on the testing, you offer the testing, but they're not in your building on a day-to-day basis, so you are not recording attendance for them, you would select that option, and then MMS does need dates, but you would select, a default calendar to base their entry and exit dates off of. And okay, so I think we're ready to click on process. I am probably going to get some interesting results here. Well, maybe it might work. So if I view my report here, so we can see for a teacher we have students and their days, we can see their membership percentage and so forth. So you would repeat these steps for each of the different subtest dates that you have. So this is not a one and done, this is repeat for all of the dates. Again, we have a validate data, which we've described already, so I'm going to run that. So and this validate data is, I've described what it's looking for. So it's, and a lot of those errors that the validation is looking for really caused a lot of problems for schools last year. And hopefully having this arrangement here is going to help with the order in which things need to be created. I know that caused a lot of problems last year, is that to go back is difficult and you would have to back out, and where we give you the ability to delete your records and then go back, I think is going to be helpful. I think just having how things need to be created in the order that they need to be created is going to alleviate a lot of problems this year. All right, so we're getting close to the end here. The last thing we're going to work on is the Staff Student Subtest. So we're going to start by creating our initial file. Oh, before that, let's address some of the questions. Somebody has a question here. And running some test runs for PVAAS and using the delete assignments, I have found that it doesn't always delete all the information in the table. I had to go into the edit teacher assignments and manually delete the assignments. Okay, and this is in the current version. I can actually write that down and follow up. So that was on the teacher assignments. Let me review the programming notes. I will make sure that I address that with the with development. This is inconvenient because you don't know which ones it will keep when you run the delete assignment option. You almost have to run the teacher assignment report to be sure it is clean. All right, I will pass that feedback on up to development. A teacher started the year when on maternity leave for a month and then returned. She would need to have 2 assignment rows for each reported course. The first would have the start date and the exit date, and the second row would have a different start date. We have the first row of dates but can't figure out how to get the second row. I will have to get back to you on that. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. Very good question. And so I read that question out loud, and we will make sure that we email that information to you. And I'm also thinking that's probably going to become a knowledge base article. I know last year we had, after the process has started, we did develop some knowledge base articles really quick and got them up on our website. Hopefully we'll be a little bit proactive and get those tech bites out there now, but that is a very good question and something that would happen fairly often, I would think. A teacher going out on a long-term disability, starting the year, and then coming back and finishing the year. So I don't have an answer, but I will get back to you on that. And I can capture that at the end of the webinar. So back to the Create Update Staff Student Subtest. So when you create your records, this is one and done. You can select all of the records, and this process is going to use students and courses from all schools. So even though I am filtering here on my high school, it's going to pull from all of the schools in my database. So when you get to this point, you need to make sure that all of your schools are ready to proceed. That's very important that that happens. So there's not a lot of checkboxes or options to worry about. Let's see. Click on process. I'm not sure if that's going to work for me where my data is. Look at that. There we go. So we have the option of viewing or printing that list from right here. Let me move that box out of the way. So by subtest, we can see the teacher. We have a start date and an end date. And this is where you needed to see the 2 records for the teacher that left, came back, because they would need to have, a start date and end date, and then another start date and end date. All right, so we will get back to you on that. I'm thinking it's going to be a knowledge base article. If there are problems, a school wasn't ready and you created this file ahead of time, you do have the ability to delete the records. Okay, an option to prepare records for subtest calculations has been removed. That was a temporary process only that was needed last year. The teacher-student responsibility listing is a new option, which we've already talked about. All right, so after, once you create the records, you want to make sure, after you review the calculated percentage, then you want to calculate the totals for the staff student subtest, which would be calculate totals here, that you would come back in. The numbers entered into the calculated responsibility field were reported in the export file. And this report here can help make sure in the review process to make sure everything is okay. We do have another validate data. And do we want to check for responsibilities over 100%? And I have a bunch of students that are. So we have a bunch that are like 300, and I'm not quite sure how that happened. And then we do have the ability to edit the data. And we can check whether we want to edit the base responsibility or the calculated responsibility. So we would select the subtest. I think that's one that I actually have something for. So once you select a test, select the responsibility, whether it's the base or the calculated, and then you can click on the other tab, the subtest list, and this is an editor where you can edit the data and change the responsibility. All right. All right, so before I do realize that we are slowly running out of time, or quickly running out of time. Let's see, we've had some other questions. Is a checklist for these steps? I have one in my hand, and that is going to become a knowledge base article. So we're going to do the checklist. So it's not going to have any details, but it will reference which knowledge base article that we have that will help you with the details of it. For today's presentation, I used 4 new knowledge base articles that were written specifically for PVAAS. The checklist, and it's probably not a final checklist, but before you start this process, make sure your term definitions have the correct starting and ending dates for each school. Assign subtest codes in the course catalog and or the course section table, depending on your course configuration. Run the create update teacher assignments process for each school. Run the validate process for teacher assignments and correct any issues found. It may be useful to run the teacher assignments listing report and look it over. And that way it can be another set of eyes looking at it. Sometimes when you look at the data so closely and with such intensity, you miss the obvious mistakes. And another person will look at it and go, well, what's this right here? And that's your problem. Run the create update teacher-student responsibility process for each school. Run the validate process for teacher-student responsibility and correct any issues found. Use the teacher-student responsibility listing to get an overview of your data. After you are sure the assignment and responsibility data is correct for all schools, my emphasis, run the create update staff student subtest table process in any school. So it doesn't matter which school you're in, it's going to pull all schools from your database, regardless. Edit the staff student subtest data for each student test where needed. After the base percentages are updated, calculate the totals for the staff student subtest. So come back in to this create update and you are going to run the calculate totals. Review. So the last step would be to review the calculated percentages and adjust any as necessary. The numbers entered into the calculated responsibility field will be reported in the export file. So that base calculations, those will not be updated or uploaded to the state. It's only the calculated responsibility field that will be reported. The Staff Student Subtest report can help in the review process. So we've given you some additional tools this year. It's amazing when we have a little bit more time to program against the changes that Pennsylvania throws at us. And by us, I mean both you, the schools, and us here at MMS. But we've added the validate data. We've added some reports to allow you to print those reports off and select who you want to view. I mean, if there's just one teacher that's getting hung up or one student that's getting hung up, you can run that report for just that student, just that teacher, and print it off and really take a quick look at it. I mean, if you're talking hundreds of pages, you're probably not going to print that off on paper, but if you're working with a smaller subset, we can allow you to limit that report and adjust the data as needed. Okay, so a question, why is there a base responsibility and a calculated? What is the difference? I do not have the answer to that one. I will have to get back to you. I'm not sure, and I do have the programmer's document, and I don't think it goes into that detail as to why there are two calculations, and I think it's just because it's a complex calculation, and that there's the base, and then once the base is correct, then additional calculations happen. This is timely information, and knowing the state of Pennsylvania, which I love dearly, even though I am a Maine gal, and I have lived in New Hampshire for more of my life, I do love the state of Pennsylvania, and the chances are that changes will be made for next year for PVAAS, and so getting a high quality of edit on this webinar is not priority. We want to get it to you as quickly as possible, so I will make sure that that happens. We have some future knowledge base articles that are coming with the checklist that I just read through, a situation where a teacher has two entry dates and would need multiple records. That would be excellent material for another knowledge base article. We hope that most of our schools know where to find information. I happen to have our website already uploaded. Knowledge base the knowledge base articles. We refer to them as KBAs, knowledge base articles. If you happen to hear one of the texts refer to a KBA, that's what it is. Click on here, and oh, look at that. It's already right there. These are the 4 knowledge base articles that I used to put together this presentation today. So we have the basic PVAAS data, we have the teacher assignments, the student subtest, and then the teacher responsibility. So those 4 documents will help you get through the process. You do want to make sure that you are downloading or have running the most current version of the Pennsylvania PIMS, which is 10.22. If you are not running 10.22, if you send an email to implementations@cri-mms.com, Chris will be sure to put you, I know he gets to everybody, and I know earlier this week he was still in the process of getting everybody caught up to the latest version. I'm not sure if all of the final updates happened last night. I think some may be happening tonight. I'm not 100% on that, but if you are not by the end of this week, send Chris a gentle nudge by sending an email, and he'll get you updated. I do have some questions that I need to follow back on, and my guess is those questions are probably going to be knowledge-based articles. So if you come in here, I do have a list of everybody here that attended the webinar. I can possibly put together a user group or a group on my email, but I think it would be best for you just to check here for additional knowledge-based articles that get added. If you put in your search PVAAS, that's going to get the articles that you need. I think we're heading into this PVAAS season in a much better place than where we were last year. We are excited with the knowledge-based articles that we have. I am thrilled with the amount of people that we had signing in for today's webinar, and I wish you luck, and read the documentation, read through it all before you start submitting, and if you run into a problem, you will need to back up and then proceed. I will get back to you, though, on that delete question, and it's kind of interesting because if I clicked on this one, the create update, it says just delete records, whereas the other one, the teacher assignments, it just says delete assignments. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more research and talk to development and find out exactly what this delete assignments is supposed to do, whether it's supposed to, start from scratch or what. But I will get back to you and also pass on the concerns that it's not completely removing everything. There was one other question. 8th graders take both the PSAA, Math, and Keystone Algebra. We created a PSASSA course and a Keystone course for the same students in the course catalog editor instead of adding sections. Will this be a problem? I don't think so. I think that the situation I gave where it was 2 tests with 1 course, I mean, that was one way of working around it. I think that would probably be worthwhile pulling out as a separate knowledge-based article. I mean, we do touch on that situation in, I think it's the 4th of those knowledge-based articles I showed you. I'm not sure whether this scenario would work also. I will get back to you on that one.